Good evening and welcome to our last driver's ed class. Please sign in as we normally do, and we'll get things started in a little bit. I almost feel like I've got to put music on here at the end, some type of, I don't know if this is going to work. No, I don't see it working. Oh, I do hear it. Oh, that's why it doesn't work. Here we go. The last driver's ed class. That kind of makes me happy, okay, to see that it does work. So before we get going, I want to make sure that we've got just about everybody logged on, because we got a few things that we need to discuss. Since this is the last time that we are going to meet, this is kind of bittersweet for me tonight. This is the last remote driver's ed class I will be teaching, hopefully in my life. It's been an interesting experience, and I'm sure it's the same with you. You probably never thought when you were much younger that you were going to take a driver's ed program, and the classroom portion was going to be looking at some guy talk to you on a screen about how to drive safely. Behind the wheel is the same. We were lucky enough to be able to get behind the wheel and drive with students about a year ago. But I've been doing this behind the microphone now for 15 months, 16 months. So come Tuesday, I will be back in the classroom teaching traditional driver's ed in a classroom. So that brings us to I Need Your Textbook. Those that drove today, I think I received half of the people that came today brought textbooks. The other half did not. Even if you don't have all your homework done, I can send you a PDF on the ones that you don't have in, so we can get the textbooks back to me. It's really important. I do have some openings for tomorrow and for Saturday and Monday, and I will probably drive Tuesday with people from this class. But come Wednesday, the new class in the morning will probably be signing up for most of the hours and days. So now the ball is in your court. You're going to have to text me of when you're available to drive, because I will probably not be texting you. I have enough people to keep me busy every day to drive. That's the way it is with most classes. I try to drive between 7 and 9 hours if I can, if I'm teaching class. So unless I'm really hard up for finding people to drive, I usually don't chase down people every night to see if they can drive. I think this has been a decent class. I've been pretty happy with the skill level, at least behind the wheel. In class, I've noticed that most of you have been logging on. I can tell by looking at the number that goes up and down, who's basically attending and who's not. By looking at the questions that you've answered during the class, I've been able to ascertain basically who's here and who's not. So remember, it doesn't matter whether it's driver's ed or anything in life. Whatever you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. So if you put in a lackluster effort, don't expect to get a great grade tonight on the final. Hopefully you did the review questions, because that's probably a truer sign of what you really have learned from this class. Numbers are the hardest things to remember, and we are going to have numbers tonight in the final. So let's kind of talk about the final real briefly. I'm looking for an 80%, I believe, or maybe I lowered it down to 75. I can't remember if I dropped it down. If you did all your homework, I'm going to give you some extra credit, bonus points, because this is kind of hard to learn this way. But if you're in the 60s, I'll tell you right now, you're going to be doing a makeup test. So we're going to have to talk by text message how you're going to have to make up the final exam. A few things about licensing. Once you get the green certificate from me, you should go online and try to schedule your driving appointment. Even if your birthday is a month away, I would schedule it in, because if you wait for your birthday or a couple days before, I'm sure that day is probably already booked up. You need to bring, when you go for your driver's license test, you need to bring your certificate that I will provide to you once you are done with this program. You need to bring your 40-hour log. You need to bring 2 forms of ID, and your parents have to sign a release indicating that they will be responsible for you, and an application that you have to fill out. Make sure your 40-hour log is not in the Road Ready app. It's going to be printed out. You can either do it by hand, or I believe there's a drop-down menu where you can actually print it. The actual driving test will go eye test first, then your written test, then your road test. Make sure you have your eyes checked if they haven't been checked for a while. Make sure that you study, so keep the state manual. I do not want the state manual back. All I want is the textbook back. If you study the state manual up to the time that you go for your license, you should be okay. And you can always go back to that YouTube review and look at the questions again if you want something more state specific. I know that there are other sites out there that will test you on road signs and things like that, but be very careful, because if it has anything to do with numbers, it may not be for New Hampshire. And the numbers could be slightly different, and you'll be learning the wrong information. Signs, I don't have a problem with you going to other sites and doing it, but be very careful when it deals with technique and footage questions. I guess that's probably about it. Let's get right in. I said that we're going to spend a little bit of time tonight talking about distracted driving. I left this particular subject for the very end because I don't think that there's a more important subject to talk about to young people that are going to get their license, because you've already learned the rules of the road, the different techniques of how to park and drive and lane change and merge and all that stuff. But distracted driving is where we really have to make some inroads to let people know and understand that you are putting yourself at risk and others at risk. Remember the first week of class that we had, I gave you a video from Andy Pilgrim that talked about you're either dangerous or vulnerable if you are distracted. So you're putting yourself at a disadvantage getting behind the wheel where you're looking at your phone, looking at the radio, looking at food. There are different ways to be distracted. But most people, once they feel they're a competent driver, feel that they can multitask, and they're probably, it's the furthest from the truth. So let's take a look at the topic of texting and driving. I'm going to show you a clip. Okay, I know. I just moved over. Trust me, I took care of it. It's no more echo. Multitasking seems to be where we're having most of the problems. So what I want you to understand, to be distracted, it's any activity that takes you away from driving. Now, this particular video that I'm going to show you is a little bit graphic, but remember, this is a commercial. This is not real life. Nobody put cameras in a car and made a video of this. It is over in Wales, and what I want you to do is keep track of how many people you think passed away in this one crash. All right? So in the comments on YouTube, so I know that you're here, I want you to write down how many people you think didn't make it in this crash, okay?
Hi, Dave. My mate Jules fancies you. Huh? It's not even funny now. Let me just get his number.
Ring an ambulance! Ring an ambulance! Stay still! I can't open the door. I've rung an ambulance.
You've got other people on the route to help, okay?
Please, look straight at me for a second.
3 vehicles have been involved.
Right.
2 people in the vehicle there. I can't get any response out of them
Maybe the ones to the front or the ones to the back?
Mommy, Daddy, wake up! Mommy, Daddy, wake up!
I just can't get any response whatsoever.
I want Mommy and Daddy to wake up.
Any pain anywhere, lovely? Yeah, is there? Any pain in your neck at all? You're nice and still for me. Alright, keep looking at me. Alright. Cassie? Cassie, can you hear me? What's your friend's name in the back? What is it? Jules, is it? No, she's still there for me.
Okay, so I want you to write down how many people you think passed away from that one particular crash. The other thing that we're going to kind of take a look at this video for just a few minutes. I think it's pretty telling. The last image that we see is that she's being flown away, taken to a hospital. And do you think she's closing her eyes because she indeed is going to die from this crash that she caused? Or do you think that she's closing her eyes because she wants to forget what just happened? How many times do we wish that things didn't happen? We want to forget things in life. We want to bury them in our consciousness. A lot of people are coming up with some good answers, but I only see Riley, Kiana, Luke. I tend to agree with you. I believe there were 7 people. I believe there were 2 people in the original car with the girls. So the driver survived. She was the one that was suffering in pain. But her 2 friends, I believe, did not make it. The first car that she hit had 2 elderly people. And it's hard to tell whether the driver, but I definitely think that the husband, who was over on the passenger side, didn't make it. And then in the car that had the family, I believe the mother and father and the baby probably didn't make it. So I think at least 6, if not 7. So 7 people did not make it from this particular crash. And it was basically caused by a car of young people crossing the center line while they were looking at their cell phone. And they were looking at their cell phone dealing with a conversation with, it looks like, boys. So with friends. Okay, what I want you to realize, okay, and this is what I want you to write down and remember from this segment on distracted driving. Most of the things that you do in your vehicle while you're driving should wait for 15 to 20 minutes. Most of your drives will be probably short than 20 minutes long. School, work, friends, shopping, maybe a half hour. You don't need to be looking at your phone. You don't need to be doing other things in the car. You have to stay concentrated. The other thing I want you to take away from this video clip, what we learned in driver's ed, is that airbags only deploy once. Notice there were 3 cars involved. They came out on the initial impact with the first crash. The car spun around and got hit again broadside. And that's where you saw the girl's neck kind of crack and snap. Airbags were no longer useful to them. The other thing we talked about this week was the cost of insurance and paying out money for liability. Even if people were, let's say that everybody lived. What would be the cost of a crash like that? Well over $100,000. That's with everybody living. Because you got to repair those vehicles. You have to pay for the medical expenses for injuries, for the air transport. But now that we have people that have passed away, that crash right there is well over $1 million, like what we saw with Jackie. You need to remember is that a few moments of being distracted, a few moments of feeling the exhilaration of going too fast will have a lifetime of consequences. In 2015, roughly 3,500 people were killed, roughly 400,000 were injured, and we can say that the cause was being distracted. Now, over on the side, we have a cell phone, and at the top it says mind, and then below it says manual, visual, cognitive, and auditory. So I want you to do the same diagram. Your mind, manual, visual, cognitive, and auditory. Because all of these items, all of these forms of being distracted. So these are forms of being distracted. You're manually distracted, visually distracted, cognitive distracted, auditory distracted. And like where it says mind, you're taking up a percentage of your mind. If your mind was 100%, you're giving 20%, 30% to something other than looking for pedestrians, traffic lights, cars pulling in or out. When you pick up a sandwich or a cup of coffee, you're losing 10%. When you're doing something, maybe combing your hair, doing your eyes, you're losing another 10%. And when you start adding these up, you're so far from 100% being into what driving is that you're just a crash waiting to happen. So let's take a look at the 4 types of distractions, and one of these might be on the final. Cognitive are distractions of thought and concentration. So if I was to ask you right now, and we could do this, I don't expect you to do this, but think a distraction of thought and concentration would be right now in your head without pen or pencil, I want you to add these 2 numbers. I want you to add 12 and 33. 12 and 33 right in your head. Most of you are thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? While you're thinking about what the answer is, if you're doing that while you're driving, you're going to miss signs. You're going to miss pedestrians because you're concentrating so intently trying to figure out 12 and 33. This is why people are having problems behind the wheel. Why, when they're talking, even with Bluetooth, because you're having a conversation and people are asking you questions and you've got to think about how to respond. Auditory is using your ears. So really, you can't have just thinking of 33 and 12 because someone asked the question. So you've got a combination of listening to the 2 numbers and then the thinking of what the answer is. Visual would be looking at your phone, looking at your radio, and of course manual would be using your hands. These are the top common causes of distracted driving: texting, talking on the phone, playing music, eating, grooming passengers. They all take your concentration away. And they've done a study, and this was done by Liberty Mutual, that gave a percentage that by far texting while driving, you're 32.2% more likely to be involved in a crash. And then it goes down to reading, like looking at your phone like a text, and applying makeup, and then they've got some that are much less than that. But by far, phone is the worst. I do want you to write down that texting and driving has been proven to be as bad as driving drunk, because when you're looking at your phone, you're drifting. You're basically you look like you've had something to drink. The car goes to the right, you look back up, you come back in the middle of your lane, you go a little bit slower, you move back to the right, you go back to the middle of the lane. Common look of what a drunk driver would be. Now, a lot of people say, well, Mr. Toll, you don't realize I'm really good at texting. I'm really good at multitasking. As good as you are, and it is a talent, there's going to come a time when you're just not going to be able to handle what's happening. And I don't want you to think that in all situations that texting and driving, it's going to be okay. Now, this guy is really talented, but he's lucky that he's not involved in a crash. Let me show you this guy.
Ja.
Absoluut, man. I'll look at the guy. What the fuck? Look at him, man. He's on his phone. He's texting.
That's when they go on the side.
Dude. He's just chilling. He's a motorbike.
So he was texting on his phone the number, and then he was talking on the phone. Was he talented? Absolutely. But look how close that car is in the picture, kind of going into his lane anyways. You're not going to be in a position to handle an emergency. You're not going to be able to handle a pothole that's out in front of you at that point. But you know what else is kind of interesting about this? And I don't know what country we're in or not, but makes you wonder who's taking the picture, who's taking the video. Is it the driver? Hopefully it was a passenger, but it very likely could be a driver. So you're no better. You're taking a picture of someone that's texting and driving, and you're on your phone taking a video. Not too smart. The facts, and I want you to write down the first two. Number one killer for teens is distracted driving. Okay, then probably suicide, then probably cancer or some health situation. But so many people are behind the wheel and texting now. The other thing I want you to remember from tonight is that the average person will take their eye off the road while texting for up to 5 seconds. And traveling 55 miles per hour, 5 seconds translates into the length of a football field, about 360 feet. Here's 6 out of 10 teen crashes involved driver distraction. This was done by AAA, and it shows you the different things that they were doing in the car at the time. And it's really hard to prove. So unless they admit to it or the police talk to a passenger, it's really hard to tell what people are doing. That's why I think it's very much underreported. Now, I want you to take a look at this graph because I really think it tells a lot. In 2014, distracted driving deaths were below 3,000. Very little. In 2015, 2016, they spiked. Okay, they went up to close to 3,500. Then in 2017, they went down. And then in 2018, they went back up. All right, so I want you to think about it. And I want you to write what you think the cause of the spike in 15 and 16 and what caused the numbers to go down in 17 and 18. So I want you to answer that question on YouTube. And I'm going to show you a video that was given to us, the driving instructors from AT&T. This was probably put out about 7 years ago, 8 years ago. It was right around the Olympics at one point that they actually showed a lot of this. So let me, I think that is, yeah. So let's take a look at this. So text me your answers while you watch the video.
My name is Grant Hendricks. I'm a trooper with the Missouri State Highway Patrol. I'm at the site of Mariah West's accident. Mariah's vehicle traveled across this median and ended in striking the bridge that you can see behind me. When I got to the scene, her face was disfigured from sliding down the roadway. It's funny, the first thing I noticed about her was her shoes. Lying in the roadway in a large pool of blood, I noticed her shoes and I thought, this is a young girl. That's the first thing I thought when I saw this. And at that point is when I noticed her cap and gown was still in her car. She was going to graduate the next day. It was just a really horrific scene. All because of a senseless text message. It's just sad. Sorry, it's just sad.
Ashley would text hundreds of messages every day. That was the way we kept in touch. We would definitely text more than we talked.
Mariah was a multitasker extraordinaire.
She could text better than anyone I know. She could be having one conversation with me, completely focused,
while having a text conversation with somebody else.
When you do something 7,000 times a month, you tend to learn where those 26 letters are.
We would be at school, at home, movies, bowling, driving.
Not even looking at her phone.
Just simple,
insignificant,
useless bullshit, whatever it may be.
About anything and everything.
Just a way to pass the time.
It didn't matter where we were constantly texting. This is my sister. She was looking at my message that I had just sent her. When she looked up, she had clipped the median on the left-hand side of the road. Her truck flipped, and as it was flipping, she was actually ejected through the driver's side door, and she landed in the ditch about 300 feet from her truck. People will tell you over and over again, it's not your fault. But knowing that you were the person that she was talking to when she was killed. Just knowing, having a highway patrol officer write in a report that a text message sent at 12:05 is the reason that she is dead is not something that will ever go away. If I could talk to her one last time, I would just say I'm sorry. This is her cell phone that she used in the accident. 4 little letters. That's what killed her.
You never really think about it, but people associate drinking and driving as a dangerous thing. Your vision's impaired, your judgment's impaired. But if you look at texting and driving, your vision's not even there. You're not even looking at the road. If someone were to ask me to drive down the road and close your eyes for 5 seconds or 6 seconds, I would never even attempt that. But then if someone asks, read this text message and respond to that in about the same length of time, well, that would be no problem. I'd done that numerous times in the past before this accident. I was on my way home. I had my girlfriend in the car, and I'm just reading a text message, responding. I was looking up every couple seconds or so, like I always did. And I just hear a loud scream next to me. And the next second I look up and I see a bicyclist crashing the windshield. When I got out of the car, he didn't have a pulse, he wasn't breathing. He wasn't alive. There are no words to describe the level of grief, the level of depression and self-hatred I was going through. My first year of college, I just remember one girl recognizing me and saying, oh, I remember hearing about you. You're that guy who hit the bicyclist because you were texting and driving. That was actually the day before I ended up going to the hospital for emotional problems. I sent one stupid, meaningless text, LOL, and killed a man.
People don't realize it could just take 3 seconds. I was going to the movies and the car just went directly into a tree and it was a direct collision. I was the passenger. I collided with the tree on my right temple and I was declared dead on the scene 3 times. I used to be able to drive. I used to be able to go for walks. I used to be able to run around town by myself. I used to have a job. I was normal. And all this, I cannot do anymore because they had the text. This is the text message that changed my life forever.
The day before her graduation, my daughter drove to go meet a boy, and she never made it. Today, she would have been 19 years old, exactly.
Mariah never wanted a minute to go by that she wasn't doing something. She wanted to do everything all at one time with friends and family and just having a good time. That's what she loved.
Friends would tell me from school that, you know, the best part of the day at school was Mariah coming down the hall because she'd stop to give everyone a hug. Okay, guys, in honor of Mariah. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mariah.
She met a guy who played baseball, and one evening she just spontaneously got in her car and said, hey, I'm gonna come watch his game. He was texting her to tell her directions of where she needed to go.
And I guess she just looked away for too long. Where are you at, you know? Like that was it.
One of her friends had no idea that she had been in an accident, so he kept texting. We ended up having to send him a text back to say, please stop. She's in critical condition in the hospital, and we don't know if she'll even make it.
She always worked her magic, you know, and still to this day, without her being here, she's so much still a part of our lives every day.
She was our sunshine. She really was. She was.
It's a simple text message. Where are you at? 3 simple words.
She paid the ultimate price for her actions. I've had to do this more than once. Mariah is not the only victim that I've dealt with. And it never gets any easier. And it won't get any easier. What is worth losing your life over? That text message
Everybody did a pretty good job on figuring out why there was a spike in 15 and 16 and why there was a decrease in 17 and 18. It's when smartphones came out and apps, and people could start doing more things with their phone. We're able to do more multitasking, check the weather, text people, talk to people, play a game, research something, look for a restaurant and reviews. Then all of a sudden, the lawmakers said, wait a minute here, we're losing more people behind the wheel of a car to cell phones. We've got to do something. So we have to enact some new laws. And notice the first year they enacted laws that went down. Okay? They knew how important it was to make people realize if you get caught, you are going to be punished. But notice the year after the initial law passed, people started to say, you know, they're not pulling everybody over. If I keep my phone way down on my lap and not up near my steering wheel, they'll never know that I'm texting and driving. Don't you wish from this picture that the driver thought twice about maybe getting their phone out and texting? And when you look at your phone, it says get out your phone and read the last text. The last text that you either sent or received, was it really all that important? Could it have waited, as we saw in the last video, could it have waited till you got to your destination, to a parking lot? And by the way, you cannot use your cell phone while you're stopped at a stop sign or traffic light. And don't you think people would learn from their mistakes? If I get stopped once, Mr. Toll, for texting and driving, I'm never going to do it again. Here's a young woman that was in a serious crash because she was texting and driving. But she lived through it. She made it. She survived. Don't you think she should have learned her lesson? What makes this such a sad story? On the day of the anniversary of her first crash while texting and driving, she died because she was texting and driving. Can you imagine the pain and suffering her parents? They lived through it a year ago, and now on the anniversary, she was doing it again, but wasn't so lucky. You guys got to think about what you're doing behind the wheel of a car. So what can you do? As we said earlier, you're not going to be distracted if the phone's not ringing or if the phone's not buzzing or vibrating. Put it someplace that you can't reach. Have a fixed playlist if it comes to music. Organize your time better. Most people think, oh, I've got to let someone know I'm going to be late. I'll text and drive. Don't do that. Find a parking lot, a driveway, someplace to pull over, to do it safely. And tell yourself, I am not going to do it. This is one thing I'm not going to do. Make a good effort not to do it. In New Hampshire, and by the way, they're actually putting out task force. Here's in Tennessee. They're putting state troopers in tractor trailers so they can look down. And notice he's got a walkie-talkie, and he's signaling up ahead to another trooper. I see a person in, a blue Ford Escort. They're texting and driving, and that's how they're going to pull them over. They're not going to pull them over in that tractor trailer. But they're out there. The people are looking at you. So this is the law in New Hampshire. I wanted to leave this with you. And basically, we're 6 years in, and it's a hand-free electronic device, which means Bluetooth is still acceptable. So anything like tablets, iPods, iPads, GPS on your car, you can't be activating them, putting anything into it while you're moving. You can make 911 calls. Bluetooth is acceptable for those that are older than 18, but teens under the age of 18 will not be allowed to use any electronic device, handheld or not, except to report an emergency. And the penalties, and I won't test you on this, but you can see it gets to be pretty substantial. $100 is not, most of you would probably have to work, 2 days at Market Basket or wherever you work, 2 days to get that $100. Second offense, $250. Third offense within 2 years, 500. It gets expensive. Now, that's just your fine. Remember, this is going on your driving record. What do you think is going to happen to your car insurance? It's probably going to go up. So is it really worth it? Plus, all the damage that you could do to the car, to you, to other people. I think you need to be smart. And I think you need to think about it. Well, that is it. That is all the material that I have to give to you. That's kind of a weak party noise. I kind of like the applause. There we go. All right, now, before we get going on the final, let me get down here for a second and put this up. Boom. This is the same password that we used on the last assignment that I gave you on bad weather and alcohol. I kept it the same for the final. The link is over on Facebook. Okay, so you should be able to go over there and do it. Take your time. You got plenty of time to do it. I believe you can skip questions and come back to that, but be very careful. This testing site can be a little bit funky, as we know, quirky. If you still have driving to do, I know some people are texting me when they can drive, so I'll get back to you a little bit later tonight. I do have an opening that I will be giving to at least 2 people. I see that they wanted to drive tomorrow, which is good. But other than that, if you have any questions, so do it on a computer and maybe text me questions during the final if you're not quite sure about it. There's one good answer. So there may be 2 that look like could go either way. Pick the best one. But it is all multiple choice. There's no fill-in. There's no matching. So take your time. And I wish you the best. I hope you do well. That way I can see what you actually have learned from this class, hopefully. And try to do it on your own, okay? So please do this because the state is not going to allow you to look at notes. So this is all on you. And, if you do finish up and you're all done with your driving, we're going to have to arrange a time for tomorrow or Saturday or maybe even the beginning of next week to get your paperwork. And if you still owe me a textbook and you're all completed, you'll get your green certificate when we make a switch between textbook and green certificate. So I wish you the best. Do well. And we'll see you when you get your certificate. Okay, good luck.